Hello everyone. Today, let's understand soil in this video not as dirt, not as an agriculture chapter, but as the thin living skin of the earth that connects rocks, climate, vegetation, water, and human survival. In this video, we'll do the full chain. First, what soil actually is, then how it forms, then its internal layers, then India's soil map and the major soil types you must know for UPSC. And finally, how soil gets degraded, how it is conserved, and which keywords keep appearing in prelims. So what is soil? Soil is a dynamic mixture of rock debris and organic material developed on the Earth's surface. And notice the word dynamic. That matters. Soil is not a dead pile of particles. It is constantly changing through moisture, air, roots, microbes, and weathering. Now lock the standard composition. About 45% mineral particles, mainly rock debris such as quartz and feldspars. About 25% air in pore spaces. About 25% water in those same pore spaces. And about 5% organic matter, also called humus. Humus simply means decayed organic material that improves fertility and structure. Here is where most students lose easy marks. Soil is not just solid matter. Air and water are both essential components. Their ratio may vary, but both must be present. Now ask the real question. What builds soil? 5 factors control soil formation, and this sequence is worth remembering exactly. Parent material, climate, relief, vegetation, time. That gives you the mnemonic PCRVT. Now separate active from passive. Parent material is the passive factor. It gives the raw mineral base. For example, minerals like quartz. Climate is the active factor. Temperature and rainfall decide the rate of weathering, leaching, and decomposition. Relief means slope and topography, which control drainage and erosion. Vegetation adds humus. And time decides maturity, whether the soil is young and weakly developed or old and fully differentiated. UPSC loves this distinction. Climate drives the process. Parent material supplies the substance. Now let's open the soil from top to bottom. The A horizon is the topmost layer. It is rich in organic matter and minerals, and it is the main plant growth zone. Below that is the B horizon, the subsoil. This is the transition zone. It contains weathered mineral matter. Then comes the C horizon, also called the substratum. This is loose parent material, the early stage of soil formation. And below everything is the R horizon, the bedrock. That is the unweathered parent rock. Now here is the distinction most aspirants miss. The B horizon is the real mixing zone. It receives material from above and below. So if a question asks where transition and accumulation begin, do not jump only to A or only to C. Think B. Now scale this up to India. India's soil pattern is not random. It reflects rivers, lava, crystalline rocks, climate, forests, and deserts. The major categories you must hold clearly are alluvial, black, red and yellow, laterite, arid, and forest and mountain soils. And one number matters immediately. Alluvial soil alone covers about 40% of India. That is why it is called the Big One. Broadly, alluvial dominates the northern plains. Black soil dominates the Deccan lava region. red and yellow soils spread across large parts of the eastern and southern peninsula. Laterite appears in high rainfall belts. Arid soils dominate the desert west, and forest and mountain soils occupy the Himalayas and other uplands. This map is not for admiration. It is for elimination in prelims. Start with alluvial soil, the river's gift. It covers about 40% of India, which is why it is the most important soil type for agriculture and for prelims. Chemically, it is rich in potash but poor in phosphorus. Now divide it properly. Khadar is the new alluvium. It is flood deposited, made of fine silt, and therefore usually more fertile. Bhangar is the old alluvium. It lies away from the active river channel and contains kankars, meaning pebbly or calcareous nodular material. Remember the contrast clearly. Khadar is new and flood-fed. Bhangar is old and pebbly. If you confuse those two, the examiner will catch it immediately. Now come to black soil, the self-plowing earth. It is also called Reger soil or black cotton soil. Its origin is volcanic, specifically the Deccan Trap region. Its texture is clayey and impermeable. Now the high-yield keyword here is self-plowing. Why? Because this soil develops deep cracks in the dry season. Those cracks improve aeration, and when rain comes, the soil swells and holds moisture extremely well. That is why rain-fed crops can survive drought better in black soil regions. Chemically, it is rich in lime, iron, magnesia, alumina, and potash. But it is poor in nitrogen, phosphorus, and organic matter. UPSC does not just ask where found. It asks why it is good for cotton and drought resistance. The answer is moisture retention plus cracking behavior. Now to red and yellow soil, where color itself becomes the clue. These soils form mainly from crystalline rocks, especially in low rainfall areas. Why red? Because of iron. In the dry state, the soil shows red color due to iron diffusion and oxidation, essentially a rusting effect. Why yellow? Because in wetter conditions, that iron exists in a more hydrated form and the soil turns yellowish. Now the formation logic is simple. Crystalline igneous rocks weather under relatively lower rainfall conditions. Fertility is not uniform. Fine-grained red soil can be fertile. Coarse-grained red soil is usually poor. And the standard deficiency must be remembered. It is poor in nitrogen, phosphorus, and humus. Do not memorize red and yellow as two separate soil families. Treat them as one system controlled by moisture and iron chemistry. Now laterite soil, the brick. The entire logic here is intense leaching. Under high temperature and high rainfall, water percolates downward so strongly that silica and lime are leached away. What gets left behind are iron and aluminium. That is why laterite becomes iron-rich, hard, and brick-like. The crop focus given here is cashew nut, and that is worth retaining because UPSC often uses crop association as a clue. Even the name helps. The word laterite comes from the Latin later, meaning brick. So whenever the question gives you the combination of leaching, high rainfall, high temperature, iron-aluminium residue, or cashew, the answer should immediately move toward laterite. Now to the thirsty lands, arid and saline soils. First, arid soils. These are typically sandy, often saline, and have low humus. A critical structural feature is the kankar layer. This layer restricts water infiltration, which makes moisture availability even worse. Now, saline soils. These are marked by high sodium and potassium content, and they are generally infertile. And here comes the real-world trap. Over-irrigation in places like Punjab and Haryana can bring salt upward through capillary action. Capillary action means water rises through tiny pores in the soil, carrying dissolved salts with it. When the water evaporates, the salt stays at the surface. That is how irrigation itself can create salinity. And the corrective term to remember is gypsum. Gypsum is used to reclaim saline or sodic soils. Now the organic and mountain end of the soil spectrum. peaty and forest soils. First, peaty soils. These develop under heavy rain and humidity. They contain 40 to 50% organic matter, so they are extremely rich in decomposed organic content. The slide marks them as black and alkaline. Now, forest soils in mountains. In snowbound areas, they are often acidic. Humus is low because decomposition is slow in cold conditions. But valley locations can still remain fertile. So retain the contrast. peaty soil means excessive organic accumulation in wet conditions. Mountain forest soil means climate-controlled variation with acidity in high cold zones and better fertility in valleys. Now the silent crisis. Soil degradation. Do not treat this as one process. It is a combination of processes, factors, and causes. Processes include erosion and salinization. Factors include climate and physiography. And direct causes include deforestation, excessive plowing, and over-irrigation. The deeper point is that soil degradation happens through interaction. Climate, soil, and biotic systems interact. Biophysical and socio-economic pressures interact. Anthropogenic and natural disturbances combine. And the statistic is serious. About 50% of India's total land is under degradation. That is not a side note. That is a national scale warning. Now come the actual agents of erosion. Under wind erosion, 3 transport modes matter. Suspension. The finest particles are lifted and carried in the air. Saltation. Medium-sized particles move in a hopping motion. Creep. Larger particles roll or slide slowly along the surface. Now, water erosion. Sheet erosion is the uniform removal of topsoil. It looks less dramatic, which is why it is often missed, but it is deadly because it strips fertility silently. Gully erosion is more visible. It creates deep channels. And one exam keyword must be permanent in your mind. Badland topography is associated with the Chambal Basin ravines. That one phrase alone appears again and again in objective papers. Now the defense. Soil conservation. First, contour bunding and terracing. These slow down water movement on slopes and reduce runoff speed. Second, regulated forestry. Roots bind the soil and reduce erosion. Third, mulching. Mulching means covering the soil surface with plant residue or similar material. It protects the soil from direct rain impact and helps conserve moisture. Fourth, gypsum application. This is used where salinity is the problem. Notice the logic. Each method is not generic. Each one matches a specific threat: runoff, loosened structure, raindrop impact, or salt accumulation. That is how you should frame conservation in answers.
Now reduce the chapter to the lines that actually win prelims.
Alluvial soil. Rich in potash, poor in phosphorus, covers 40% of India. And you must know Khadar versus Bhangar. Black soil. Rich in lime and iron, poor in nitrogen, known for self-plowing and strong water retention. Laterite soil. Rich in iron and aluminium, poor in silica and lime, defined by intense leaching and brick-like nature. Arid and saline soils. Rich in sodium and potassium, poor in nitrogen, and identified by the conker layer and capillary action problem. Review this carefully. A very large share of objective questions on soil can be solved from this exact logic. Here's your homework. Revise each soil type once by formation, once by chemistry, and once by one keyword. If you can do that without looking at notes, you are exam ready.